So, for me and my partner, we decided, okay, if we're going to manage this ourselves, which was our intention, what is the easiest place to self-manage? That was kind of like part of our criteria. So, I'm one where I don't like to complicate things. So I simply was like, let me go find some other investors and ask where are they investing,
Yeah.
and just copy them. I mean, there's a book, Copy Your Way to Success, and it's like, okay, well, if it's good for you, why can't it be good for us?
Yeah.
So that was how we ended up in Tennessee. It's the Smokies, but I'm like, it's funny because a lot of people in the S tier space know it's like the OG area. Everyone's
Hmm.
there, but there's a reason why everybody's
Yeah.
there. It's a tried and true market. So I simply just wanted a place that I could self manage very easily. That was important to me from being from California. So that was how I chose that market. And because I personally really love vacations, I was like, okay, I could pick between city or I could do vacation markets. The arbitrage property was more in a city hybrid market. It's not exactly the most vacation area. But I like the idea of going to visit these properties and having it as essentially a tax write off. So I was looking for vacation destinations. It fit my criteria. So that's how I ended up over there. And then my Texas place, I was actually going to go back to Tennessee, and we couldn't find anything that worked out. So I just caught wind. I was like, you know what? I had this like I would love something in the city, the beach, the mountain, like the ocean, like all of those, the trifecta of climates.
Yeah.
So I was looking at all the beach markets around the U.S. and I came across, okay, best priced area is towards the Gulf. So let me look over there. And that's how I ended up in the Texas Gulf side after looking at different markets.
Got it.
So
Got it. Wow. Interesting. Cool. Yeah. And that's the side benefit of this business, right? Is that you can visit the properties yourself, and it can be an awesome getaway for you as well. Um, so you talked about getting to four of these then between arbitrage and owning properties, to be in a place to leave your full-time job. So I want to kind of dive into that, or discuss what that was like for you, because that's where a lot of my listeners want to get to. When you decided to pull the trigger after you got to four of them, what did you do from there? Like, what was that next day like for you, when you didn't have to show up to work? And then what steps did you take from there? How have you grown from that point?
I love that you asked this question because I really don't feel like people talk about that transition
Yeah.
enough and how it's such a mental shift,
Yeah.
especially if you've been from somewhere with a lot of structure. W-2 jobs typically are this way. To complete, it's all you have to boss yourself around. And I struggled a lot. And I think I still could say I struggle now, but it's gone 10 times better just because I have become more disciplined with what I need to do. But it's funny because it doesn't feel forced like it is when you have a W-2 job. But at first, it felt like an extended vacation, like PTO.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. You kind of get this first month high, I should say, of like freedom and, and then eventually the reality does hit that, well, how are you're not getting a paycheck necessarily every 2 weeks the traditional way that if you do have a W-2. It's more in this sense commission based, or it's just more based on your at least in the S tier space. You gotta work a little bit harder than you do in a long term rental to get bookings and or get fill the gaps.
Hmm.
So for me, it was I had to really outline like what would I want my day to look like, and I would mix it up between morning routines, night routines, and then figuring out in between like how do I do it. So I come to the conclusion that I Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are income producing days. So I focus on income producing activities. Um, Versus Tuesdays and Thursdays are like my maintenance days, so to speak. So I work on my back end. As you scale, you realize you got way more back end stuff you got to figure out and systems to refine. So I would reserve those for Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I've kind of kept that same thing where I try to push most of my meetings a certain day of the week or twice a week and keep certain days just like flexible days.
Mm.
I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to restructure what my weekends look like. And then I realized because the world runs on a Monday through Friday scheme,
Yeah.
and anybody you know, family, if you have kids, and just even just working hours, it made it a little bit harder for me to kind of be flexible in when my off days were. So I just pick a flexible day out of the week and not book anything and let that day be it could be a work day, it could not be a work day, but try to take my weekends off. Though I do find myself working more like 6 days a week and then I have one day off.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it doesn't feel like that. So but it has taken a lot of just discipline. It's like a muscle because in the beginning you realize you have to be a little bit more. You can't be risk averse once you don't have a job anymore.
Hmm.
You do have to take bets on you and um, just boss yourself around. So I think that's like a little bit of what that transition like, but it had highs and lows. There's actually this entrepreneurial chart where you go off this high and then you go to they call it the depths of despair. It's like a real thing.
Yeah.
It's temporary, but I think that's when the reality sets in that you can't depend on anybody other than you to run your business. And so you start to gain that hope and traction again. And then you kind of go into this nice, like, plateau or you keep scaling depending on what stage you're in. So I think that helped. A mindset books helped me a lot
Mm.
through that. To be honest, I started doing more instead of technical books, which I did at the very beginning. I switched over to more mindset and personal development, and that's made all the difference these past few years. Just doing entrepreneurship on a full time basis.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I'm there's so much overlap in our stories and how I've felt going through that same transition. And it's weird because you're so wired and programmed to work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday that like you you almost feel guilty not, or adjusting your schedule. I have people in my like we have a babysitter that'll come over and watch her kids a couple times a week, and I think she thinks that I'm like this like drug dealer or something, that because I'm like around, I'm like working out in the middle of the day. Like she doesn't see me go to an office ever, but she's like, the guy is somehow has income coming in, and like, and then you're like family too, like, you're around, so you should be available, and it's, you're not really at work, so why aren't you like hanging out, or you could go do this project with me or whatever. Um, so it's a weird, like, kind of in between stage or lifestyle, I guess, that you live. That's been my experience, that you really have to get used to, and like you said, create your own structure, because you're your own boss. But it can be really awesome at the same time. Like you could, really live a life on your own terms, which is cool. So where, I guess, how did you continue to grow your business? A lot of people, like, two things I hear a lot are like, once I leave my full-time job, I'm not going to qualify for financing anymore, so I don't know how I'm going to get financing. And then also healthcare is a big reason why people stay at their job longer than they want to, because they feel like, well, this health insurance is like so expensive. So how did you handle both of those situations once you left?
Yeah, so I mean, with the insurance side of things, fortunately for me, I did get my realtor's license. I thought it was like the logical thing to do, but I didn't use it like as a full time residential realtor. I did it just for my own deals. But it had a health insurance that was optional that you could take, so
Mm,
I used that. But I did research a lot, like, oh, should I do Cobra? Should I all that stuff? I recently just switched to Covered California. Instead, just because I needed a little bit more than what my realtor's healthcare insurance was providing. But they have healthcare like policies for entrepreneurs. I feel like that shouldn't be the holdback
yeah.
for me to do this because plenty of people work as a 1099er, which is essentially kind of, you can almost, if you think of it that way, then, or look up 1099 things, that will fit what you are, not being employed by an official corporation.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I did for health insurance for the past few years, and it worked out that way for me. Um, and then tell me the second one that you asked me.
So financing to continue to grow your
Oh, yes.
business, like how many, I guess, how many properties have you purchased since then, and what type of financing have you used?
Yeah, so the cool thing is that there's actually a lot of loan products that are based on the asset and not the borrower. So for us, we started doing more fixers and doing hard money loans because it's all based on the deal and not you as the borrower. When we first bought with having a job, we focused more on just nicer turnkey properties that didn't need work,
Mm.
especially because they were out of state, and that was perfect for us because we backed out of a few deals when we found out it was just more fixing than what we wanted to put our attention to when we had full time jobs. But when we so my partner's I quit first, and then about less than a year later he joined me.
Wow.
So I was the one that started us off. So um, but then we started doing more value add opportunities because we had more time. We didn't have the jobs and the loans. We could acquire those. So that's kind of how we did it afterwards. But yeah, there's always a ton of options in terms of financing. It's just you just have to know you have to come up with a usually bigger down payment, and the interest rates are slightly higher when they're more investment style. But I've learned that there's a solution for every problem. There's truly no excuse for like anything, but it's a good thing because that means nothing should be holding you back from going after what you want.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. There's always, if you find a great deal, I've always said the funding will be there. There's always funding
yes.
for a
Oh,
great
and we
deal.
borrowed money too, like private money lenders. That's another way that we without having to go through banks. So that was another thing that we've done to acquire real estate and scale.
Got it. Okay. And at what point did you start to incorporate virtual assistants?
Um, for me, I decided when I really wanted to do other ventures, I that's when I decided to get VAs, just because it's not once you get the hang of it, it's like rinse and repeat. Like I could do the rentals myself. I don't have a huge portfolio, and I like to keep it that way. But I simply just wanted to leverage like my time better and not have to put my attention where it doesn't have to be. So um, that I think it's been about a little over it's like 2.5 years since I had VAs with me. So and it's been life changing because they don't just help me with the real estate, they help me with my personal life too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, it sounds like you have a lot going on with the rental properties, the flipping, the virtual assistant company. So can you kind of share how it's all structured? Like, what do you use VAs for? Like, what is your, I guess, yeah, what's your overall business structure look like?
yeah, so um for me, I don't think I have a very big team, but but I mean, it's relative, I
Yeah.
suppose, right? So I have three full timers and two part timers. So two of my full timers will run the STRs. They basically, to be honest, they're like my internal co-hosts. They're the point of contact, first line of communication for all guests, vendors. Um, they I've taught them how to get bids if things have to get fixed. They do the resupply orders for me. They'll handle I've kind of taught them how to do some light bookkeeping for the rentals, remitting taxes to the city for certain properties. Some marketing, I let them go through my own socials to kind of do that for me, to some of the cabin groups to do just like light marketing. Some listing optimization too. So the two full timers handle that. I have one executive assistant who's my jack of all trades. So I hired her initially to help me just with any personal project I have and also on the realtor side. And I trained her on short term rentals, more so just so that she speaks the same language as the rest of us. And I don't, I told her, your primary role isn't to cover the rentals, but if you have to step in, you know how to
Hmm.
in a pinch. So she kind of helps me on everything else, and she kind of helps do a little bit of training. She's like my catch-all. And then my two part-timers are they're flexible shifts, so they primarily cover the rentals, and but they'll also kind of be like the assistants of my executive assistant too. So um, they're more just on call by the hour whenever we need to plug them in to fill in gaps. So that's on my personal side. I'm actually acquiring, it's exciting, 2 residential assisted living businesses.
Wow.
So I'm going to actually figure out, I have to create this. I know that you can do a lot of HR stuff remotely. So I'm going to somehow train an HR manager in-house, and I might either, depends on my VAs. I don't force them to do rules that I did not have them initially sign them up for. I'm either going to have a dedicated VA for this that I'll just hire from in-house within my agency, or if they're open to it, I'll just have 1 or 2 of them kind of learn the ropes as I learn the ropes of how to do the back end stuff for this. So I'm like on the fence of that. But that's like my personal how I utilize virtual assistants. But like, I mean, my executive assistant helped me plan a vacation out of the country for me. She helps organize my calendars, my emails. If I have to have her call people or ask questions to, like, sometimes I have to ask, oh, can you call this person to ask this question? And they'll go ahead and do it for me. So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of all the things, but there's plenty of things that a virtual assistant can easily do. If it's on a computer, it can be taught. So
that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So for someone listening to this, then where would be the best place for them to start? For most people that you work with that are real estate investors, which role, I guess, do you recommend someone starting with?
Probably an executive assistant. I didn't start this way, but if I were to kind of like big old scheme of things, an EA is a good idea, just because most people, they always say I don't have enough work to give, and I'm like, you do, you just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
The thing is, you want to make sure that you don't just create like a mini you that's also chaotic, because before you know it, your assistant needs an assistant, and that's normal. So I'd say an executive assistant that like has a primary focus with a secondary focus until they're at the point where maybe you can start giving them something else. So it's the easiest one, because you start with the more redundant tasks until you start to get more complicated with whatever projects you're working on. And then you can grow your VA that way until you realize you need to have a separate person for a certain skill set.
Yeah.